The night he held me, it didn't feel like a hug anymore, it felt like the world had disappeared, leaving only us. Two boys, caught between fear and longing, suddenly closer than we were ever meant to be. In that silence, with his arms around me, I realized, this wasn't friendship anymore. It was the beginning of everything forbidden and unforgettable. When I think back to that summer, the sound that comes to me first isn't laughter, or footsteps, or the hum of cicadas outside the dorm windows. It's music. Every morning, like clockwork, the rehearsal hall came alive before the sun was even fully up. Pianos tinkling, voices warming up, guitars being tuned. The place smelled like coffee, sheet music, and the faint polish of old wood floors. For most people, choir camp was about perfecting harmonies and surviving long days of practice. For me, it became about him. Ethan. He wasn't the loudest singer, or the most talented, though he had a voice that could pull the air straight out of your chest if you weren't ready. No, what made him stand out was the way he carried himself. He was casual, loose, like he wasn't trying to prove anything. He sang like he was telling a secret only a few people deserved to hear. The first time I noticed him, he was leaning against the wall outside the practice room, notebook in hand, tapping his pen against the paper in rhythm with whatever tune was stuck in his head. I walked past him with my folder of sheet music, and for half a second, his eyes lifted and caught mine. Not in that obvious, dramatic way you see in movies. Just a flicker, enough to make me feel seen. I told myself it was nothing. Just a glance. But later, when we were split into smaller groups, I ended up directly across from him. His voice slipped into mine like it had been written there all along. Where I hesitated, he steadied. Where I cracked, he smoothed over. It wasn't just harmony. It was balance. That night, lying on the stiff dorm mattress, I kept hearing his voice in my head. And I hated how badly I wanted to hear it again. The camp schedule was brutal, 8-hour days, split rehearsals, workshops, even the occasional, fun activity that usually felt forced. But somehow, Ethan kept finding ways to cut through the monotony. He cracked quiet jokes that only the people closest to him could hear. He rolled his eyes when the conductor got too serious, but never so much that he'd actually get caught. The thing that killed me was how easy it was for him. Everyone liked Ethan. He didn't chase attention, but it seemed to follow him anyway. I tried not to stare too much, but the truth is, I was constantly aware of him. The way he sat, half-slouched, scribbling notes in the margins of his music sheets. The way he closed his eyes when he sang, like he needed to block out the world just to feel it fully. And then, the small things started. During a break one afternoon, when the room emptied out for coffee, Ethan stayed behind, strumming his guitar. I pretended to be looking for a missing pencil just to linger. He caught me. "You're not actually looking for anything, are you?" he said without even glancing up. I froze. "What makes you say that?" His lips curved. "Because you've walked past the same chair 3 times. Heat rushed to my face, and I muttered something about being tired. He didn't push. He just went back to strumming, but that smile, it stayed. By the end of the first week, it felt like the universe had quietly pushed us into each other's orbit. Assigned seats put us side by side. Group projects paired us together. Even the dining hall somehow left us sitting across from each other more often than not. None of it felt forced. It was like a rhythm had already been written, and we were just playing our parts. Still, there was something unspoken in the way he looked at me sometimes. Not heavy or obvious, subtle, fleeting, like he wasn't sure if he should. I felt it most during those moments of silence, between rehearsals, when the room was half empty, and it was just the two of us pretending to be occupied with something else. One night after a particularly long practice, I was walking back to the dorm, my throat sore from over-singing. Ethan jogged up behind me, guitar case slung over his shoulder. "You always walk alone?" he asked, falling into step beside me. "Guess so," I said. "You shouldn't," he replied, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. It wasn't much. Just words. But something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. The dorms were loud, packed with voices and music even late into the night. But sometimes, when the noise settled just enough, I could hear faint strumming from down the hall. Ethan, playing something soft, unfinished. I would lie there in the dark, pretending not to be listening, even though every chord reached me. One night, I got up. No real reason, just an excuse to fill my water bottle. The hallway was dim, shadows stretching long under the buzzing fluorescent lights. His door was cracked open, and sure enough, there he was, sitting on his bed, guitar resting on his lap, head tilted in concentration. He noticed me before I could slip past. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Not really." "Me neither," he admitted, patting the empty spot beside him. "Want to sit?" It should have been nothing. Just 2 guys killing time in a too-quiet dorm. But as I sat there, the space between us smaller than I expected, I realized something. The air felt different with him. Thicker. charged. He played a few notes, stopped, started again. I didn't say much. I couldn't. My throat was too tight. At some point, he set the guitar aside and leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes. "This place feels fake sometimes, doesn't it?" he murmured. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Like we're all performing, even when we're not on stage." His eyes opened, finding mine in the low light. "But not you. You don't feel fake." I wanted to answer. I wanted to tell him how much that meant. But all I could do was sit there, heart pounding, trying not to give myself away. That was the night I knew something was shifting. It wasn't a crush, not anymore. It was heavier than that. And though neither of us said it, though we both carried on like everything was normal the next day, I could feel it. The line between us was starting to blur. And deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before something broke. The second week of camp meant travel. Our group had been invited to perform at a summer arts festival in the next town over. Buses lined up outside the rehearsal hall early that morning, the sky still painted in soft pastels. Everyone lugged backpacks and instrument cases, voices buzzing with caffeine and half-slept energy. The air smelled like dew and diesel. I climbed aboard one of the buses, trying to slide into a seat by myself. But just as I set my bag down, Ethan appeared in the aisle. "This taken?" he asked, nodding at the empty spot. I shook my head, suddenly aware of how loud my pulse was. He dropped into the seat, shoulders brushing mine for just a second before he shifted to get comfortable. It was nothing. It was everything. The ride stretched on for an hour. Sunlight spilled through the windows, fields blurring past. Around us, people dozed off or listened to music through tinny earbuds. Ethan leaned back, legs stretched out, head tilted toward the glass. For a while, he hummed along softly to whatever song was in his headphones, and I pretended not to notice how close his voice was. Halfway through the ride, he pulled one earbud out and handed it to me without a word. I hesitated, then slipped it in. A slow ballad filled my ears, the kind that made the whole world feel softer. "Good, right?" he asked quietly. I nodded, afraid to speak in case my voice cracked. We listened in silence, the rest of the bus fading out. And for a moment, it felt like it was just us, suspended in some secret pocket of time. The festival itself was chaos. Tents lined the park, food vendors calling out, performers darting back and forth with last-minute nerves. But once our group finished rehearsing, we had a few hours to wander. Ethan and I ended up drifting away from the others, weaving through stalls selling everything from handmade jewelry to old vinyl records. He bought a cheap bracelet, blue woven string, and tied it loosely around his wrist. Then, without asking, he looped the other half around mine. "Friendship bracelet," he said lightly, though his eyes lingered on mine longer than they should have. "Right," I echoed, trying to ignore the way my stomach flipped. We ate greasy fries out of a paper carton, laughing when the ketchup spilled down his shirt. For a little while, it was easy. Just two boys exploring a festival, blending into the crowd. But when the sun started to set and the sky turned gold, the ease gave way to something else. We were standing near the edge of the park, music drifting from a distant stage, when Ethan suddenly asked, "Do you ever feel like you're holding something back?" The question hit me harder than it should have. "What do you mean?" I asked. He shrugged, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Like there's this version of yourself you only show to certain people. And everyone else just gets the mask." I swallowed, unsure how to answer. He wasn't looking at me, but I could feel the weight of the question pressing between us. Finally, I said, "Yeah. I feel like that all the time." For a long moment, we just stood there. Then he smiled faintly, like I'd given the answer he'd been hoping for. That night, after our performance and the long ride back, the dorms buzzed with leftover adrenaline. People joked in the hallways, blasting music, still riding the high of the crowd's applause. But eventually, the noise dimmed, and I found myself restless again. I stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin. The campus was quiet, trees swaying gently in the breeze. Ethan was already there, sitting on the steps with his guitar resting beside him. He glanced up when he saw me. "Can't sleep either?" I shook my head. We sat together in silence, the moonlight painting the grass silver. After a while, he picked up the guitar and strummed a few soft chords, his voice low as he sang something I didn't recognize. The song was unfinished, raw, and he broke off halfway, shaking his head. "It's not there yet," he muttered. "It's good," I said. "Really good." He looked at me then, really looked, like he was trying to read something on my face. The silence stretched, heavier this time, until my chest ached with it. Then, almost too quietly to hear, he said, "You make it easier." I frowned. "What?" "Being here," he clarified. "This camp, all of it. You make it easier." I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened, and before I could respond, he leaned back against the steps, breaking the moment with a half-smile. Don't let it go to your head. But the words stayed with me long after we went back inside. The next few days blurred into routine again, rehearsals, meals, endless repetition. But something had shifted. Whenever Ethan's shoulder brushed mine during practice, it didn't feel accidental anymore. When his laugh broke through the monotony, it felt like it was meant for me. And when I caught him watching me across the room, he didn't look away as quickly as he used to. It was dangerous, and I knew it. But the more I tried to bury it, the more it surfaced. The truth was simple: Ethan was pulling me closer without even trying. And I didn't know how much longer I could pretend I wasn't following. The counselors decided to break up the monotony of rehearsals with a campfire night. By the time we hiked out to the clearing, the sky was painted deep navy, stars scattered like spilled salt. The fire snapped and roared in the center, sending sparks spiraling upward. Someone passed around marshmallows, others strummed guitars, and laughter carried through the trees. I sat near the edge of the circle, clutching a skewer, pretending to be invested in the slow melt of my marshmallow. My eyes kept drifting across the fire to Ethan. He was surrounded by people, of course, he always was, but every so often, he glanced my way. Each time, it felt like the flames between us were the only thing keeping me from unraveling. Eventually, the circle loosened. People wandered off in pairs, chasing shadows into the woods or collapsing onto blankets spread across the grass. Ethan stood, stretching, and his gaze caught mine. "You look like you're hiding," he said softly as he walked over. "Maybe I am. Want company?" I nodded before I could stop myself. We ended up walking just beyond the glow of the fire, where the night was quieter and the stars brighter. The smell of smoke lingered in the air, carried by the breeze. Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets, kicking at the dirt path. "Do you believe in fate?" he asked suddenly. I blinked at him. "That's random." "Maybe. But do you?" I hesitated. "I don't know. I think people make choices, and those choices lead somewhere. Fate feels like an excuse sometimes." Ethan tilted his head, considering. "Interesting. See, I think fate's just another word for connection. Like, you meet someone, and they change the way you breathe. That can't just be chance." The words sank into me, heavy and terrifying. My chest tightened, but I forced a laugh. "You always this philosophical after Esmores?" "Only with the right person," he said, grinning. We found a fallen log near the tree line and sat. The campfire was still visible in the distance, glowing like a heartbeat. Around us, the woods hummed with crickets and the rustle of leaves. Ethan leaned back, propping himself on his elbows, his profile outlined against the sky. He looked untouchable in that moment, like something I shouldn't even dare to want. But then he turned, catching me staring, and instead of pulling away, he held my gaze. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "Nothing." He smirked. "Liar." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, but it was charged. I could feel the question hanging between us, unspoken but loud. Then, without warning, he reached over and plucked the skewer from my hand. "You're terrible at roasting marshmallows," he teased. "Completely charred. Here, let me." I rolled my eyes, but I was grateful for the distraction. He leaned close, balancing the skewer carefully over the fire. The proximity made me hyper-aware of everything: the brush of his arm against mine, the warmth radiating from his skin, the way his hair smelled faintly like smoke and cedar. "Perfect," he declared a minute later, pulling the golden marshmallow free and holding it out to me. "Try it." I did, and the sweetness nearly melted on my tongue. But the way he was watching me, like I was the one worth tasting, made my face heat more than the fire ever could. The night deepened. Most people had drifted back toward the dorms, their laughter fading into the distance. But Ethan and I lingered, the fire crackling low, shadows stretching long. "You know," he said quietly, "I never expected camp to feel like this." "Like what?" He shrugged. "Like, more than music. More than practice. It feels alive. Because of..." He trailed off, and I felt my breath catch. "Because of what?" I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. His eyes met mine, steady. "Because of you." The world seemed to tilt. The crickets, the fire, the stars, all of it blurred. I opened my mouth, then closed it again, completely undone. He leaned in slightly, his shoulder brushing mine, not by accident this time. For a heartbeat, it felt like the entire universe was holding its breath. We didn't kiss. Not that night. But when we finally stood to head back, Ethan's hand brushed mine, lingering for just a second longer than casual. It was small, barely anything. Yet it sent a shiver racing up my arm. As we walked back toward the dorms, the glow of the fire fading behind us, I knew something irreversible had shifted. Whatever this was between us, it wasn't just friendship anymore. And though I didn't know where it was leading, I couldn't stop myself from wanting more. The next morning, Camp was back to its usual rhythm: alarms, showers, rushed breakfasts, rehearsals. No one would have guessed that anything had changed. But I carried the memory of that night with me like a secret flame. Ethan didn't mention it, and neither did I. But when our eyes met across the practice room, there was a knowing there, an acknowledgement we couldn't put into words. It was dangerous, I reminded myself. But it was also undeniable. And maybe, for the first time, I wasn't afraid of where it might take me. The morning after the campfire, everything looked the same: sunlight bleeding across the practice hall windows, the usual chatter about breakfast and warm-ups, but nothing felt the same. I caught myself glancing at Ethan more often than I should have, like my eyes had been rewired to find him first. Every time he laughed, every time his fingers brushed against his guitar strings, it was like a secret message only I could hear. But if he noticed, he didn't say anything. He kept his easy smile, his calm confidence, his perfectly normal way of being. It made me wonder if last night had meant as much to him as it did to me, or if I'd just imagined it. We were running a new piece, the room buzzing with overlapping instruments. Ethan sat across from me, strumming, his foot tapping in rhythm. I was supposed to be focusing on the sheet music in front of me, but the notes blurred. Our eyes met once, twice. The third time, I held it a beat too long. "Eyes on your page," Mr. Callahan barked from the front of the room, snapping me back. My cheeks burned. A few kids snickered. Ethan covered with a grin, pretending like nothing had happened, but I caught the flicker of something in his expression, a spark of recognition, maybe even thrill. The rest of rehearsal felt like walking on a tightrope. I tried to bury myself in the music, but my chest wouldn't stop buzzing with the weight of that almost exchange. After lunch, we had downtime. Some campers sprawled across the grass, others tossed frisbees. I found a shady spot near the oak trees and opened my notebook, pretending to write. My pen tapped nervously against the page. Footsteps crunched through the grass. I didn't even have to look up, I knew. "Mind if I join?" Ethan asked, dropping down beside me without waiting for an answer. "You always do anyway," I teased, though my voice cracked with nerves. He leaned back on his elbows, looking up through the branches. "You're hard to read, you know that?" My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "Last night." He lowered his voice, even though no one was close. "I wasn't sure if you wanted me there." I swallowed hard. I did. His eyes flicked to mine, and for a second, it was just us and the weight of everything we weren't supposed to say. Then, voices carried across the field. A group of kids were heading our way, laughing. Ethan shifted slightly, putting distance between us, casual again. My chest ached at how fast he could switch it off. That evening, the storm hit. Rain drummed against the dorm windows, thunder rumbling deep in the sky. The schedule cleared, and campers holed up in common rooms, playing cards or watching movies. I ended up in the lounge, curled on the couch with a book I wasn't reading. The lights flickered once with the storm. Ethan slipped in quietly, his hair damp from the dash across the courtyard. He shook out his jacket, spotted me, and without hesitation, sat down closer than he needed to. The faint smell of rain clung to him. "You hiding again?" he asked softly. "Maybe." He smiled. "Guess that makes two of us." The thunder cracked, rattling the windows. Instinctively, I flinched. His hand brushed mine, not by accident this time. Just a touch, steady and grounding. It should have been simple. Just two boys, side by side during a storm. But in that moment, with the air thick and humming, it felt like stepping into dangerous territory. My pulse thundered louder than the storm. I wanted to lean into him, to let the space collapse completely. But the room wasn't empty. Other kids sprawled on beanbags and chairs, their laughter echoing. Someone could see. Someone could guess. Ethan must have felt the same, because he pulled his hand back, slowly, reluctantly. His jaw tightened. "Not here," he muttered, almost too quiet to hear. Later that night, I lay awake in my bunk. Rain tapped against the roof, softer now. Across the room, I could hear Ethan shifting, turning over in his bed. Every inch of me ached with confusion, thrill knotted with fear. I replayed his words, his touches, the way his eyes lingered. It wasn't just me imagining it. He felt it too. But what did that mean? What could it mean here, in this place, surrounded by watchful eyes and rules that didn't bend? I pressed my face into the pillow, heart pounding. The night felt endless, full of questions I didn't dare answer. The next day, tension hung like smoke between us. We moved through rehearsals, meals, and free periods, our words measured, our glances stolen. It was as if the storm had left something behind, not in the sky, but in us. At lunch, one of the other boys, Ryan, always loud, always joking, slung an arm around Ethan's shoulders. "Man, you disappeared during the storm. Sneaky. What were you up to?" Ethan laughed it off, but my stomach twisted. The way Ryan's arm lingered, the easy intimacy of it, it shouldn't have mattered, but it did. And when Ethan's eyes met mine across the table, there was something unreadable there. Guilt? Jealousy? Or maybe just the same fear I carried. Whatever it was, I knew one thing: we were standing on the edge of something neither of us fully understood. And sooner or later, it would pull us under. The following days blurred into a rhythm: breakfast, rehearsal, practice, downtime, but beneath the surface, every hour felt charged, stretched thin like a string about to snap. I kept telling myself I could just ignore it. Pretend. Play the part of the friend, the roommate, the boy who wasn't keeping a secret curled tight inside his chest. But pretending got harder every time Ethan's gaze lingered a second too long. On Wednesday, rehearsal ran late. We were working on a new arrangement, voices layered with instruments until the hall buzzed with sound. Mr. Callahan clapped his hands, calling for silence. "Pair up," he said. "Work through the tricky sections in duets. Helps the ear, helps the timing." My stomach sank even before Ethan's eyes found mine. Of course we paired up. We slipped into one of the side practice rooms, the door creaking closed behind us. Suddenly, the noise of the others felt far away, muffled. "Guess it's just us," Ethan said, half grinning. Like always, I muttered, flipping open my sheet. We started with the music, but it didn't last. His voice, low and steady, wrapped around mine, and the way he leaned in, the way our shoulders brushed, it threw everything off. Notes tangled. Timing slipped. "You're distracted," Ethan said softly. "You're one to talk," I shot back, though my voice cracked. His eyes flickered, daring me to say what we both knew. For a heartbeat, I almost did. But then the door banged open. Ryan stuck his head in. "Yo, you guys done? Need the room." I jumped back so fast my chair screeched against the floor. Ethan leaned away, his face smooth again, unreadable. "Yeah, almost," he called. Ryan squinted, looking between us, but didn't push. He just smirked and disappeared. I couldn't breathe. The walls felt closer than ever. That night, the camp held a movie screening in the lounge. Most of the kids crammed onto couches, piling blankets and pillows. I tried to focus on the screen, but Ethan slid in next to me, so close his knee brushed mine. Nobody noticed. Or if they did, they didn't care. But for me, every touch felt like a spotlight. Halfway through the movie, the power flickered, storming again outside. A collective groan filled the room, but the screen stayed on. Ethan leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "You okay?" I nodded, though my pulse was racing. He didn't pull away. Instead, his arm pressed lightly against mine, deliberate this time. I froze, torn between wanting to stay and wanting to run. Then someone behind us whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "They're always together, aren't they?" Laughter rippled. My face went hot. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't move his arm. Not right away. When he finally shifted, putting space between us, it felt like a wound. The whispers didn't stop. Over the next couple of days, I caught glances, smirks. Maybe I was imagining it, maybe not. But the paranoia clawed at me all the same. During lunch, Ryan nudged Ethan. "You two should just start your own duet act. Save us the trouble." Ethan rolled his eyes, playing it off. Jealous? But Ryan grinned too long, like he saw something neither of us wanted him to. I stabbed at my food, heart hammering. Every joke, every side-eye, felt like a spotlight we couldn't escape. That evening, desperate for air, I slipped out to the practice hall after hours. The place was dim, shadows stretching across the stage. I sat at the piano, pressing random keys just to fill the silence. The door creaked. "Couldn't sleep?" Ethan's voice drifted in. I didn't answer. I didn't have the strength. He walked closer, his footsteps echoing. "Hey!" I finally looked up. His face was softer than I'd ever seen it, eyes tired, vulnerable. "I'm not sorry," he said quietly. My chest clenched. "About what?" "About this. About us. Whatever this is." His hand hovered near mine, not touching, but close enough to make my skin burn. "But I hate seeing you scared." I shook my head, torn between relief and terror. "People are already talking. Let them." "You don't mean that." His silence told me I was right. The thunder rolled outside, heavy and low. I wanted to tell him I couldn't do this, that it was too dangerous. But instead, I whispered, "I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending." His hand finally brushed mine, so light I could have imagined it. "Then don't," he said. For a moment, it felt like the world had collapsed into this one space, dim lights, quiet music, storm pressing at the windows. His eyes locked on mine, unblinking, as if daring me to take the step neither of us had taken yet. I leaned closer without meaning to, like gravity itself was pulling me. Our hands almost linked. Our shoulders almost touched. And then, the door banged open again. Mr. Callahan's voice thundered, "What are you two doing in here?" We jerked apart, guilt blazing across our faces. Just practicing," Ethan stammered. Mr. Callahan's eyes narrowed. "At midnight?" He sighed, shaking his head. "Back to your dorms. Now." The spell shattered. We left without a word, the hallway echoing with our footsteps. My stomach twisted, my mind racing. That night, lying in the dark, I replayed it all, the touch of his hand, the weight of his words, the way we'd almost tipped into something unstoppable before being caught. We hadn't been exposed. Not yet. But it was close. Too close. And part of me wondered if it was only a matter of time. The camp buzzed with rehearsals for the end-of-week showcase. Every group was perfecting their sets, every voice blending, every note sharpened. But for me, nothing felt steady anymore. It wasn't just the music. It was Ethan. We'd been circling each other for days, caught between glances, whispers, almost touches. Every time I thought I could keep control, something pulled me closer. And now, with the showcase looming, the air between us felt electrified, impossible to ignore. During practice, Ryan threw his arm around Ethan again, laughing at some stupid joke. The sight sent something sour spiraling through me. "You two dating or what?" Ryan teased, loud enough for a few others to snicker. Ethan shoved him off, grinning, but my stomach churned. I forced a laugh, though my voice sounded thin. "Jealous much?" Ryan smirked. "Hey, I'm just saying. You're like, inseparable." The others laughed. Ethan didn't. He looked at me instead, something tight in his expression, like he could hear every word I wasn't saying. That night, after lights out, I couldn't sleep. My chest felt knotted, my head buzzing with everything I couldn't say. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, when a whisper cut through the quiet. "You awake?" Ethan's voice. I turned my head. His silhouette shifted in the bunk across from mine. "Yeah." He hesitated. "Meet me outside?" My pulse leapt. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could, careful not to wake anyone. We slipped out into the night, the camp hushed, the air cool with leftover rain. We walked until we reached the empty amphitheater, the wooden benches slick with dew. The stage loomed dark, ghostly in the moonlight. Ethan sat on the edge, and I joined him, my knee brushing his. He was quiet for a while, staring out at the trees. Finally, he said, "I don't like when they joke." "About us?" "Yeah." His jaw tightened. "Not because it's untrue, but because they make it sound cheap, like a punchline." My throat tightened. "And it's not?" He turned, eyes sharp. "Is it, to you?" The question hit me like a slap. I shook my head quickly. "No. Never." Something softened in his gaze. "Good." We sat in silence, the night buzzing around us. I could feel the heat of his body beside me, every nerve alive. "I get jealous," I admitted before I could stop myself. When he. "Don't," Ethan cut in, his voice firm. "It doesn't mean anything." "Still." I looked down at my hands. "I hate it." For a moment, he just stared at me. Then, softly, "So do I." The words hung there, heavy, undeniable. It should have ended there, but it didn't. Ethan leaned closer, just slightly. Close enough that I could see the way his chest rose and fell, the tiny scar near his eyebrow, the raw honesty in his eyes. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. I couldn't. I wouldn't. Instead, I leaned in too. Our shoulders touched, then our arms, then, his hand found mine in the dark. The contact sent a shock through me, raw and dizzying. For a heartbeat, it was everything I'd been afraid of and everything I'd wanted. Then a noise cracked the spell, footsteps, somewhere in the distance. We jerked apart, hearts pounding, scanning the shadows. But no one appeared. Still, the fear was enough to slam reality back into place. Ethan cursed under his breath. "This is insane." "Yeah." My voice shook. But even as we said it, neither of us moved away. The next day, everything was worse. We tried to act normal, but every glance felt loaded, every joke from the others sharper. Ryan kept needling, tossing innuendos, smirking when we sat too close. At one point, during lunch, he said, "Man, you two should just get a room." Laughter erupted. My face burned. Ethan froze, his fork clattering against his tray. "Shut up," he snapped. The table went silent. Ryan blinked, surprised. Then he raised his hands. "Whoa. Chill, dude. Just messing around." But the damage was done. Eyes lingered. Whispers buzzed. I wanted to vanish. That evening, I hid in the practice hall again, running my fingers over piano keys without playing. The room smelled faintly of dust and wood polish, a cocoon away from everything. The door opened. Ethan slipped in. "I can't keep doing this," I blurted. He closed the door, stepping closer. "Doing what?" "Pretending. Hiding. Acting like nothing's happening when it is." His jaw worked, silent. Then, finally, so stop pretending. I'm scared, I admitted, my voice breaking. Me too. His eyes softened. But I'm more scared of not trying. He reached out, fingertips brushing mine. I should have pulled back. Should have said no. Instead, I let him take my hand. For the first time, neither of us moved away. He tugged me closer, until I was standing between his knees, the piano behind me. His hand settled on my arms, tentative but firm. I couldn't breathe. This is real, right? He whispered. Yes. And then his forehead pressed against mine, his breath shaky. We didn't kiss, not yet. But in that moment, with our bodies pressed close and the world locked out, it felt inevitable. The spell broke when the door handle rattled. We jumped apart, my heart in my throat. The janitor poked his head in. You boys aren't supposed to be here after hours. Sorry, Ethan said quickly. We're leaving. The man frowned but waved us off. We hurried out, the night swallowing us. My pulse thundered, my skin still burning where he'd touched me. Back in bed, I stared into the dark, everything replaying over and over. His hand in mine. His voice saying this is real. It was real. Too real to ignore. And I knew, sooner or later, it was going to explode. The showcase was just 2 nights away. Every group was locked into non-stop rehearsals, nerves humming through camp like electricity. On the surface, it was about songs and choreography, but for me and Ethan, the pressure went deeper, because everything between us was reaching its tipping point. We'd been careful. Careful in practice, careful at meals, careful not to let our glances linger too long. But no matter how careful we tried to be, the space between us crackled with something alive, something impossible to disguise. And people were starting to notice. It happened in rehearsal. We were running through harmonies, the full group gathered on stage. Ryan, always too loud, always too close, kept nudging Ethan, whispering jokes, pulling focus. At first I bit my tongue. But then Ryan leaned in, whispered something that made Ethan laugh, and draped his arm across Ethan's shoulders like it was nothing. Something inside me snapped. Do you ever stop? I blurted, sharper than I meant. The room went quiet. Everyone turned. Ryan blinked. What's your problem? My problem is you acting like this is your comedy hour, I shot back, my voice shaking with more than anger. Ethan froze, eyes wide, torn between us. Ryan smirked. Oh. I get it. You're jealous. The word sliced through me. Laughter rippled across the group. My chest burned. I'm not, I started, but my throat closed up. Ethan dropped Ryan's arm off his shoulder. Enough. His voice was low, firm. The laughter died. Ryan held up his hands. Whatever, man. But the looks, the whispers, they didn't stop. After rehearsal, I stormed out before Ethan could follow. My pulse hammered, my thoughts a tangled mess of humiliation and fury. I hated Ryan for saying it. I hated myself for proving him right. I ended up in the woods, the campfire smoke from other groups drifting faintly in the night air. I kicked at the dirt, wanting to scream. Footsteps approached behind me. I didn't turn. You can't keep doing that, Ethan said quietly. I spun on him. Doing what? Defending us? Making it obvious. His jaw was tight, eyes pained. People are watching now. I laughed bitterly. They were always watching. Now they're just saying it out loud. His shoulders sagged. I don't want you getting hurt because of me. Don't put this on me, I snapped. You're the one who laughs at Ryan's jokes, lets him hang all over you like it's nothing. It is nothing. His voice cracked. You think I want him? You think I don't notice the way you look at me every second we're in the same room? The words hit me like a punch. My chest heaved. Then stop pretending it doesn't mean anything. The silence between us was deafening. Finally, Ethan stepped closer, his face pale in the moonlight. I'm not pretending. That's the problem. The air between us thickened, charged with everything we'd been holding back. My hands trembled at my sides. Then what do we do? I whispered. Ethan's voice was raw. I don't know. But I can't keep fighting this. His eyes searched mine, desperate, scared, wanting. And then, before I could think, before I could second guess, I reached for him. Our hands collided first, clumsy and urgent. Then his other hand cupped my jaw, pulling me closer, until his lips crashed against mine. It wasn't gentle. It was messy, desperate, everything we'd been swallowing for weeks bursting free in one reckless kiss. The world tilted. My heart thundered so loud it drowned out everything else. His breath, his touch, the press of his mouth against mine, it was all-consuming, terrifying, perfect. For the first time, we stopped running. When we finally pulled apart, gasping, reality slammed back in. We weren't alone. From the corner of the clearing, a flashlight beam cut through the dark. A voice called out. Hey, what are you two doing out here? It was one of the counselors, his tone suspicious. My blood went cold. Ethan jerked back like he'd been burned. Just, getting some air, he stammered. The counselor frowned. Get back to your cabin. Now. We nodded quickly, hearts pounding, and hurried past him, the weight of his stare burning between our shoulder blades. Back inside, the cabin was dark, the others already asleep. We slipped into our bunks without a word, but I could feel Ethan's presence across the room like a magnet. Sleep didn't come. All I could hear was the echo of his voice, I can't keep fighting this, and the memory of his lips on mine. The next morning, everything felt different. Ethan avoided my eyes at breakfast. He sat with Ryan, laughing too loudly, like nothing had happened. My chest ached. Last night had been real. I knew it. But now it was like he was erasing it in front of everyone. At rehearsal, I could barely sing. My voice cracked, my timing faltered. The director barked at me, frustrated. Ethan kept his focus on the music, never looking my way. It hurt worse than if he'd hated me. That evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I cornered him outside the practice hall, my voice sharp. Are you seriously going to pretend last night didn't happen? His face tightened. You don't get it. Then explain it to me. He glanced around, making sure no one was listening. His voice dropped. If they find out, we're screwed. They'll never let it go. Ryan already suspects. So what? My voice cracked. We can't keep living like ghosts just because we're scared of what people think. Ethan's eyes shone, torn between fear and something deeper. You don't know what it's like for me. Back home, if people knew, he trailed off, swallowing hard. My anger softened. Ethan. But he stepped back, shaking his head. I can't. Not here. Not now. And then he walked away, leaving me standing alone, my chest hollow, my lips still burning with the memory of the kiss he was trying so hard to erase. The tension has finally exploded. They kissed, but instead of relief, it's created more danger. Fear of exposure is now overwhelming, and Ethan is pulling away just as the narrator is ready to embrace the truth. I couldn't sleep that night. The kiss still burned on my lips, a ghost I kept chasing with every breath. My body wanted to believe it was real, wanted to believe it meant something. But Ethan's eyes when he pulled away, that look of fear, like we had just destroyed everything, haunted me even more. The next morning, he avoided me. At breakfast in the camp mess hall, he sat 2 tables over, pretending to laugh at someone else's joke, his gaze never once drifting to mine. I felt like I had been erased overnight, like our secret had swallowed me whole and left him free. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I found him outside near the trail, sitting on a rock with his guitar case at his feet, pretending to tune strings that weren't even in his hands. Ethan, I said, louder than I meant to. My voice cracked. He flinched. Don't do this here. Do what? I stepped closer, my heart pounding. Pretend it didn't happen? His jaw tightened. It was a mistake. The words cut through me like glass. A mistake. My chest tightened so hard it hurt to breathe. Don't say that, I whispered. What else am I supposed to call it? His voice was sharp, but it was shaking too. If anyone finds out. I grabbed his arm before I could stop myself. It wasn't nothing. Don't tell me it meant nothing. His eyes finally met mine then, dark and restless, filled with something he was trying desperately to bury. It doesn't matter what it meant. Yes, it does, I said, my throat tight. It matters to me. For a moment, the air between us felt heavy, like we were standing on the edge of a cliff, one step away from falling. But then he pulled his arm free. You don't get it, he said. You can survive this. I can't. The words crushed me because they were true. I could hide. I could blend in, laugh it off, pretend. Ethan couldn't. He was too visible, too loud, too unapologetically himself. And if anyone started to suspect, if anyone connected the dots, he would be the one destroyed, not me. He shouldered his guitar and started to walk away. My chest ached watching him retreat, every step like a door slamming shut. I almost let him go. Almost. But something inside me broke open. Ethan. He froze. I don't care who sees, I said, voice shaking but rising with something I hadn't felt before. I don't care what it costs. I'm not ashamed of what happened. His back stiffened, but he didn't turn around. You are, I continued, but I'm not. And I won't let you erase it just because you're scared. When he finally faced me, his eyes were red, like he'd been holding back tears. For the first time, he didn't look like the confident boy who owned every room. He just looked young, fragile, terrified. I'm not scared for me, he whispered. I'm scared for you. My heart stuttered. For me? He stepped closer, his voice low. If they know about us, it won't just ruin me. It'll ruin you. People here talk. People at home talk. You think they won't notice? You think you won't lose everything? The weight of his words pressed down on me, but so did the weight of my own longing. I shook my head slowly. I already lost everything the second you kissed me. Because now I can't go back. His breath caught. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world stilled between us again, the same electricity, the same hunger, the same pull. But this time, he didn't lean in. He just looked at me, torn apart, and whispered, "Then what do we do?" The silence stretched long, filled with everything neither of us knew how to say. My chest ached with the truth. I wanted him. I wanted us. But wanting wasn't enough. Not when the world outside would tear us apart the moment it found out. I swallowed hard. We survive. That's all we can do. And even though we were standing only a foot apart, it felt like miles. That night, back in our shared room, Ethan climbed into his bed without a word. I lay in mine, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breath slow into something that sounded like sleep. The distance between our beds had never felt wider. But in the dark, with my chest tight and my throat aching, I whispered the words I knew he'd never let me say aloud. "I don't care what it costs. I just want you." The silence answered back, heavy and endless. And I knew, deep down, that silence was the only thing we would ever share again. Some things can't be undone. When summer ended, we went our separate ways like nothing had ever happened. To everyone else, we were just two boys who'd once shared a camp, a room, a handful of songs. But to me, Ethan was the echo I carried in my chest, the memory of the night his lips met mine, the night his arms made me believe I mattered. We never spoke of it again. Not in messages, not in the rare photos we tagged each other in. It became our silent pact, the kind of secret that binds and breaks in equal measure. He lived louder, brighter, as if nothing had touched him. I learned to live quieter, holding the truth where no one could see. But even now, when years have passed and the world has shifted, I sometimes close my eyes and feel it, the weight of his arms, the hush of his breath, the heat of that impossible kiss. It lives in me like an unfinished song, aching, unresolved, beautiful because it was never meant to last. And maybe that's the point. Not all love stories are made for forever. Some exist only to show us who we are when the world is stripped away. He held me like I was the only one in the world. And even if I never was, for that one secret night, I believed it. If this story stirred something inside you, I want to hear from you. Drop one word in the comments that captures how it made you feel: exposed, loved, heartbroken, understood. Your story matters too. Have you ever carried a secret like this, something you couldn't say out loud but still lives in your chest? Share it below. Someone reading might finally feel less alone. Let's make this space honest, raw, and real, because love, in all its forms, deserves to be heard.